Welcome to the Face to Face podcast, your go-to resource for living a life of vitality, wholeness, and authenticity. I am one of your hosts, Melinda Wilson.
And I'm your other host, Kathy Little. Join us as we explore deeper connection, lasting freedom, and meaningful relationships with God, others, and your true self. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back. Episode 164. Got a great treat for you today. I want to just give you a very quick update about a couple of things that are going on.
We had Dash Away 43 2 weeks ago in Western North Carolina with 15 people. And Kathy, I got to say, we had such a good time. And I know we say that it's about every Dash Away, and every Dash Away is my favorite. But this was also my favorite.
Yes.
And we laughed so much. And there was also extraordinarily beautiful connection with the ladies, having really deep conversations and fun conversations. It was much needed weekend of laughter.
Well, I was thinking along the way about that verse in Proverbs that says that laughter is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt that with the ladies, that there was a measure of healing that was happening through the levity, through the laughing, through the joy, through just being silly together. It was really delightful. And, you know, we still have another Dash Away this year coming up August 15 to 17 in Lake Tahoe. That registration is still open, and we would love to have you come and join us there. More laughter and healing to be had, but even more than that, the deep soul care that we all need as ladies to step aside into that holy pause. So we'd love to have you join us there. We also are in the middle of just launching our level 1 training this spring, and we have 33 students that are joining us. We're super thrilled about that with the Emmanuel Institute. If you haven't checked out the Emmanuel Institute website, please do. We're really happy about that. And our friend Marie Kasner, who's one of our grads and has been working with us with academic design and development, she created that for us, and it is emmanuelinstitute.com with an I. So we'd love to have you check that out.
Yep. And we have another 7-week level 1 course starting in the fall.
September,
so
October.
You can get on our newsletter list and you'll find out. You'll be kept updated on when. And we, you know, if you get on our newsletter list, there's no spam because there's actually not that many newsletters.
Yeah.
We need to send more.
We actually just keep you informed.
Once every couple months, but we'd love to have you join us. Yeah. And again, welcome to episode 164. We're slowly, steadily climbing up to 200. And I know I have ideas for 200 for our guest, but we'll see. Yeah. But we have with us Hannah Ploegstra. And she is an expert on working with and being in just great friendship with Gen Z. And that she will explain to you what the generation is, what age that is. But I found it incredibly insightful and helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, there are some generations that are not yours that you don't really understand. And this is one that I haven't really fully understood. And even though I've got family members in that group, but I thought it was pretty fascinating and very helpful. So we thought we'd share that with you and hope that you find it helpful as well.
Thanks for listening.
All right. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for being part of the podcast, being part of the conversation. There's so many different topics that we cover on this podcast, and it's all about helping people connect with Jesus. And you've got a really particular niche that we're excited to talk to you about. But I wonder if we could just start with you giving us a little bit of your story, like a little bit of your personal journey and a little bit about how you came into working with this particular group of Gen Z.
Yes. I mean, the short story is all 4 of my kids are Gen Z.
Well, there you go.
Yep. I mean, that says it right there. I've got from top to bottom, I've got a almost 25-year-old, almost 23-year-old, and then a 19-year-old, a 16-year-old. So that really spreads, you know, most of the generation, which technically starts 1997 and goes through 2012. So, and my kids were born between 2000 and 2009. So, yeah. So being a mom, I homeschooled our kids. And so I was in it with them the whole way through. I also previously to having children was a teacher. So that got me, as a homeschool mom, I was an English teacher. And so if there's anyone listening who's a homeschooler, like the two terrifying topics to teach are writing and math. And so being a writing teacher got me a lot of little gigs, with homeschoolers. And so I ended up developing kind of a little high school community around storytelling. And still, it's still a thing, even though they're all past college now and everything. It's like, so I tracked with Gen Z. I also did a Bible choir, and which basically we memorized a bunch of scripture to music, and then we would put on a concert once a year. And so I had a few different experiences raising my kids that gave me a front row seat to the way the generation was progressing. Right. And so that's kind of the short of it. But me personally, yeah, I've always had a heart for young adults. So right now, Gen Z is approaching that, they're in that age, and the younger ones are approaching that age. And so right now, I mean, I am just I feel like I was made for this right now, what's happening and what they're going through and all of that. And so I have a lot, I've got my own kids, I've got a lot of their friends. And then that has just ended up a lot of of who I am and what I care about has just kind of risen to the surface as for such a time as this, it feels like, right? So another thread that the Lord wove in that I thought was just for me was back in 2011 or so. I began I was in my mid 30s then, and I began for my own personal reasons to ask questions of scripture, specifically why did God make men and women? And of course, the gender thing has been around for decades and all of that, but I had no idea that it was going to explode. And I was just asking for my own sake as a woman in the church, in the body of Christ, what is my actual value here? What, not just my felt value, but what does God have in mind here? What do I bring to the table as a woman that a man doesn't bring to the table? And how can we, what is God's vision for the collaboration of men and women, not just in marriage, but also in the body? And so I needed it. I was hurting. I was experiencing some hurt in church. And so for my own reasons, I went to God and I told him I am not going to look at any other book or conversation on this until I feel like I understand your heart for this. And once I understand your heart for this, then we'll get some other voices into it. Right. But I need to find my true north on this. And so I ended up doing this long study called Life Matrix. And man, there was so much in scripture that I didn't even, in fact, I wouldn't say I didn't even know it was there. It was I didn't realize this weaves into the revelation of God's heart for men and women and gender. And so I started I'm a writer, right? So I just have to put everything into words. So I'm putting this all into words and gave it a name. And then my daughter went to college in 2018, my oldest, and she's in the arts. And so she was thick into a public university arts program. And she's it was just in Fresno. So that's just an hour away from where we live. So she wasn't far away, but she's halfway into her first semester. She's like, Mom, I need to meet with you once a week. I'm going to die if I don't have an anchor. My mind is getting blown here with the way people are talking, the way people are living, the things that are accepted and all of that. And so we started meeting for coffee once a week. And she grew up in our home and had a biblical worldview. At least I thought that's what she was getting. But it turns out she was confused, not even about herself, but just about the whole thing in general. And that really, it didn't scare me because I know my daughter and I know she's sincere. And it's okay, cool, let's talk about this then, right? God has answers for our questions. But it did really open my eyes to the fact that this entire generation is confused. This is not a marginal crowd. This is not they are all confused. Our kids are confused on this. And so I just started sharing with her, well, this is what I've been learning, which felt like really fresh, right? It wasn't like, well, let me tell you, as an older person who has this all figured out. It's like, no, honey, like I'm hurting too. And if we're honest, we're all hurting on gender. Like we all, is there a woman that's ever lived in the world that hasn't like at one point went, man, it stinks to be a woman? Or is there a man that hasn't ever like felt the burden of, man, it's hard to be a man, So just to get down and dirty with her like that, like I share this, and she was like, Mom, everybody has to hear this. She goes, everybody in my world has to hear this, Christian or not, this is so clarifying and so hopeful. So I started kind of teaching more and all of that. And then eventually this nonprofit was put together around me in the year 2020 because things were falling apart. And I was like, my kids are entering college and I need a job, and there were enough people now in the community that wanted to see me keep going with young adults that they started this nonprofit. And we're small and fragile, but it keeps me able to do this as my job, which is helpful right now in my life. And I wouldn't want to do anything else. Honestly, it feels like an extension of motherhood, but it also feels like my calling. And like, I want the Lord to, show me the path forward into this for as long as he'll let me do it. So yeah, there's just been a few streams of the way he's developed me, the way that my walk with him has gone. That's just placed me in a conversation with Gen Z that's very relevant. And I've been tracking with them and growing with them for 25 years now. And so I do feel kind of semi-jokingly call myself a Gen Z ambassador, for lack of a better title. I'm like, what am I? I don't know. But that is really actually how I feel. I feel like I've been almost like a missionary to another culture, having been not just the mother of Gen Z, but really like 24/7 with them, living with them, doing life with them, and not just my own four, but like a whole community of them. And so I feel like I do understand them, but I also, like an ambassador, I understand why they're confusing to people. And so I love getting to go back and forth. I mean, my real passion is to be sitting with Gen Z and just like infusing hope, joy, the love of God, vision, perspective, leadership. So much about leadership is needed. But I also really, anyone else outside of Gen Z who will listen to me, which you'd be surprised, there are people that are really interested like you. And then there are people that are kind of like, you're crazy. Like they're so screwed up. They need something way bigger than that. Wait, what are you talking about? And so I'll tell you about my air and water approach later if you ask me, but so I love to go back and forth between the generations because it's needed. I mean, you guys are familiar with Life Model Works. And so you know that like it's vital for every generation to have every other generation, right, in the game with them. And so they are aching, like they will say they're aching for multi-generational community. And yet other generations find them disturbing, confusing, frustrating. And so I love to bridge that gap. Yeah.
Why do you think that people that are not in that generation, whether younger or older, probably usually older, I would assume, are a little bit of, I don't know, either intimidated by what is it about this particular generation that we as other generations don't understand? Like, why is it like I can look at my parents' generation, like boomers and all that, and go, yeah, they walked through this war, and then you've got the millennials that like in their early 40s, they're doing their thing, and sort of define them in a sense. But why is this generation seem to be like almost intimidating or something to people? Like, what would you find is the biggest response to this generation
Mhm.
that people have?
Mhm.
Like, even call
Yeah.
them crazy to work with them.
Yeah. I think the biggest would probably have to do with their what feels to us like lack of relational skills. And I will validate that to some degree. Like and they would too. There is a lack of relational skills in the generation, but they also, I mean, they are human and they are made in God's image and they have found a way to relate. Like you just can't get around that. And so some of understanding them and getting inside is like learning the relational patterns and acceptable, ways of relating that they do function in together. And then but also they feel the lack that brings. It's not completely dysfunctional the way they relate, but it's kind of a, what do you call it, like a self-contained system.
Hmm.
So it does, right, it works within the generation, but it doesn't really translate very easily to anything else. And so I think that people in older generations feel cut out
Hmm.
of all that, like they're looking, in from the outside, or like there's this inside joke that they're not a part of, that we're not a part of. But that's definitely not how Gen Z is feeling it or trying to come across. I think there's also, from their perspective, they feel the lack, where there is a lacking in skills, they feel it and would humbly admit it. But if you think about it, it's kind of like a self-perpetuating problem, because if you're lacking in relational skills, one of the most basic things you need to be able to do is ask for help. And that's one of the things that's like not a skill that is easily learned inside of the system that they're a part of. So it's a very passive system, right? It's a like things come to me kind of a system. Like people that want to relate to me will come to me, and that's all the social media influence. It's the phone interface, right? And so you just have to put the phone in front of your face, and now it's you become a passive participant in this. And but you're also kind of the king of the hill, because you're able to just like get rid of anything you don't like. So it's kind of a strange way of relating, really, in which you get to call the final shot, but also you don't have to initiate anything, if that makes sense. So I think that's just a lot, like really foreign to any generation that's ever lived on the planet before, which is like we learn our identity, our relational skills, we learn who we are, what's expected of us within the context of other faces and within the context of other voices. And where that is working well, we cultivate, and where that doesn't work well, we tend to back off of it. But they've been given an interface that's entirely foreign to the human brain. And so
I was going to ask you about phones and technology and social media. And, there's such an illusion of connectedness with the internet, with phones, with social media that is not how our brains are meant to be in community with one another. And so if that's what they know and that's what's shaping them and forming them, then of course there's going to be some gaps in there. And I'm wondering if in the context of that, what is it that the Gen Z heart is the most desperate for? What is it that they crave? What is it they want? What is the thing they wish for as a generation?
Oh man, peace.
Yeah.
I think they just long for things to slow down and make sense. And I think they just I mean, it's almost cliche now to talk about Gen Z and anxiety, but it's like the amount of minutes per day that they don't feel at peace is not fair. It's not good. And I think like older generations can be very judgmental about that. Oh, they're always on their phone. Oh, they're always this and that. But I'm also like, man, I walk with this generation through college applications, DMV appointments. Like a lot of the people that I care for are they're trying to get their lives up and running, and they're trying to apply for jobs. And it's like every single I tell them, I'm like, you guys, I just want to tell you that when I had to apply for a job, it was a piece of paper and a pen. And we walked it in, and there were certain things that like your dad and mom told you, like, oh man, make sure you make eye contact. And these are the things that, right? That's not what they are not given opportunities by the system at large to function in this way. And every single solitary thing that they have to do in order to get on their feet in this world is digital, and it's internet. It's not personal. And so like they're lost, they're confused, and frankly, so am I. Like we sit, I'm like, I've realized that I'm not actually helping you with this. I am just sitting with you in front of this screen right now, trying to make sense of what they are asking of you, because it does not make sense. And it's hard, and it's frustrating, and it glitches out, and it's not communicating well, and they're not letting you know what they want of you. And all, I mean, I've been through enough of these moments with my own kids and with a whole dozens of other kids where it's like, whoa, man, this is not all your fault, and you're trying to get a life, and you're not, like, you're not able to. So
it's like they're almost cut off from reality, like living in this digital matrix in a sense that is kind of fake. I mean, like it's not fake, but it is fake in that it's not handing somebody a piece of paper and talking to them behind the pizza counter going, do you need any pizza makers? I mean, that was my first job. Yeah. You walk down the street and say, I want to apply to work here at Round Table Pizza. And then you have a conversation, and you had to be able to have the conversation. And like, I remember going at 16, 17 and being scared out of my mind, but you're having a face-to-face conversation with somebody. But you're talking, everything is digital now. They're not set up then to even know how to be relational. Like they're not set up to be able to know how to have hey, when you shake their hand, give them a good firm handshake. As we've learned, we had the privilege of learning that. And like you said, make eye contact, and even just how to live in a world that isn't a remote job. I don't even know how many jobs now are remote where you don't even have to talk to somebody face to face. So how do we then create, like how do we create an environment for Gen Z to help them grow in relational skills? I mean, is that partly of what you're doing? Just helping them be able to sit in front of somebody and make eye contact for more than 2 seconds and connect personally. Like, how do we even start to help them do that or learn that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like I have my natural family, right? That they're being in my family did not make this world easier for them. Like they have all the same frustrations and everything. And all the things I promised them, like, oh, if you learn this and that, and then it's like, nope, that didn't turn out to be the world that they got delivered into. And so even for my own kids, it's about like being with them in the dystopia. Honestly, it's about not being like, what is your problem? It's like, literally, this is our generation's problem. We created this. We are the ones behind the magic curtain, like making this all larger than life and impossible to handle. So I think just to be able to I can't change the system, but I can be a person with the people who know me. And I think beyond that, I'm learning like how many of Gen Z's parents, so that would be like a lot of Gen X, right? We were really distracted and caught up, and our generation's whole kind of thrust was like, make a big impact. Like, we're the ones that came up with the mega church, and we're the ones that, came up with the internet. And like, maybe we didn't come up with the internet, but we came up with the iPhone, and we were the young adults. Like, I remember when I first saw the internet, and it was like, what's it for? And, and someone literally said to me, like, oh, it's so cool. You can just literally look up anything you want and it'll pop up on the screen. And I remember going, I already can do that in the library. Like, so that was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that look, okay, so let me just back up. So I think that one person with compassion who can say, man, this is confusing. The thing we bring to the table is maturity. It's not that we don't have any greater knowledge about most of this stuff than they do. Like, if anything, we have less, right? Like, we're a little bit like less tech savvy, but we do bring maturity to like, no, we can get through this. We're going to get to the end. It's going to work out and all of that. But when I think too of the students that I have whose parents they were themselves not being given relational experiences, because frankly, Gen Z is like the end of a road. They're not the beginning of some strange new thing. They are the end of like a major meltdown in family connections and relational ways of life that I kind of trace back to like the 50s and 60s. But I think that a lot of Gen Z didn't get their brains wired to even like I said before, ask for help and sit with someone on. So, I mean, I really do have a number of people in their mid 20s, some of them late 20s, some of them even early 30s. I'm the first person that's ever sat down with them and tried to work through a form or tried to talk through like a girlfriend problem, or tried to, and just kind of sat down and took the time. And it's amazing how they're like, this makes all the difference. Like, this just makes me feel like I'm gonna make it. And so as I've just learned a lot about brain science and the way that, Jim Wilder's new series on becoming a more human community, right? Like the first one is about infancy and childhood and just the way that the brain develops. I am really trusting God right now that he will use me to some degree, whatever he wants, in different people's lives who didn't get that when they were supposed to. And it's not like I'm just babying them. It's the withness, right? It's the being with them. Now they're not learning to walk, they're learning to apply for a job. But I can be that other brain, that bigger brain, that face of joy, that calm presence that their brain needs in order. That's where we start learning to be relational as human beings. And there are like, this generation is filled with people who need someone to start from scratch and you're not starting on a blank slate. You're starting with a very wounded system, but at the very least, the love of God can come in there and be like, hey, you're not on your own for the rest of your life. Like, there's ways we can recover from your isolation. And so, yeah, I think that, yes, I am trying to build communities, and I am trying to put groups of like boomers in the room with my Gen Zers, and we have older couples come, they tell us their stories, and it's like, I'm trying to do that, but actually I think that the more foundational work that God is doing in me right now is teaching me how important it is for me just to personally show up for them. So that is partly why we're just small right now. It's like, I hope that down the road I have more strategies and more even connections and more resources to be able to build communities, because that is what people in their 20s need. But their brains need remediation. And so if we're not willing to be that one person, it's like, I don't know that this person's going to show up to a big crowd full of people.
Right.
They're overwhelmed. And again, they need peace. Like that's overstimulating. And,
Oh gosh. I mean, I didn't even think, Hannah, about why they have so much anxiety. Like, I'm holding up my phone and it does cause so much anxiety. And even when I am watching animal videos, I'm still, which are super cute or whatever, there's some anxiety because I'm keep scrolling for the next cute one. And we know like, oh, I got to get the next hit of dopamine. And man, it's like, then it's becoming this addictive cycle thing. And of course that causes anxiety and like, wow. And it's probably even like they may not even be aware or know why they have so much anxiety. But I did want to comment and then ask another question to your point about just having someone with them, because I think of my niece, and last time I was visiting, she had the skill enough to ask my sister-in-law, her mom, to just sit with her while she was studying. So she's in college and she just needed the support. And then when she couldn't be there, she asked the older neighbor lady to come. The older neighbor lady didn't do anything but sit and read her own book for 4 hours while my niece did her studies. And I just find that so interesting that you said that. And I totally thought of that. And they weren't helping her do the work. It was just, I need somebody here that I could see out of the corner of my eye, or I know you're in the house somewhere with me. That's so fascinating.
Right. Well, and one of the things I have to insert there is that, and this is where our generation we just need to humble ourselves before the Lord and just be like, okay, out of love, this is what's needed. But what I hear a lot of is like the criticism of, well, she's 23 years old. Why can't she get through her homework, on her own? Why should she? And I get reproached a lot from people my age, because it's like, oh, you're just coddling them and you're mothering them. And it's like, no, I'm not. Like, we all need this and we all are gravitating towards it, actually. So Gen Z is having to ask for it out loud. But you and I are doing this all the time too. We are placing ourselves in comforting places so we can get through our day. We're finding, it's just, we've learned to kind of navigate that naturally in a way that looks more mature. Where they're like, if someone doesn't come help me intentionally right now, I'm gonna stay in this like buzz,
Yeah.
We can't be so critical. We can't be so belittling.
And I thank you for saying that. And I've just been thinking, just to add just a little comment here. I really appreciate the perspective and the shift in perspective, because it's really easy for us to just want to write this generation off. Like, you guys are just messed up. But our generation created the environment for that to happen because of the technology.
Yeah.
So if we've been part of the culture that they are now having to navigate, then it's kind of helpful for us to understand that piece so that we can have more compassion and that we can identify and make choices that are going to help that generation.
Right.
Because it is, they are in a completely different culture. It's completely foreign to me. And probably a lot of our listeners, it's just, it's a foreign landscape. And yet, if you can look beneath, I mean, it's no wonder they're so confused. They've got so much going on. They don't know how to really connect. There's so much that they're grabbing for belonging. They're grabbing for identity because it's eluded them, because they're of this matrix that they're in. And so I just appreciate that. And we've got so much we could keep talking. Melinda, you had another question.
Well, and it tied into, thanks, Kathy, it tied into what I had said about my niece. But for someone who wants to connect with a Gen Z, or they know someone, maybe it's a friend's kid or something, and they have no idea, because this is what they see, And I get that. I see that with
Yeah.
my nephew. I'm like, help me. Maybe I'm the only one who wants to know, like, how the heck do we even begin to relate to, reach out to, connect with a generation that we don't understand? But that
Yeah.
you're saying, and I hear you, and I implicitly know this, are crying out and longing for connection. But how do we do it?
Mm-hmm. Right. So it has to do with this paradigm of culture. And, if you were a missionary going into another culture, we all know this kind of like from the way they used to do missions. And it's like, oh, that wasn't as effective. It's not as great of a model to like go into another whole different culture and be like, okay, we're setting up here. Aren't you lucky? All of you get to come into our church now and do church the way we do, right? It's like there's some reconnaissance work that needs to be done. There's some educating of me that needs to happen before I'm ever going to learn that language or understand that rhythm or those gestures or reactions or why they like that food or whatever, right? So I would say my first advice is when we've been talking about this is do not underestimate the value of your presence. Put yourself in the same room. This is another thing that I see Gen Xers and boomers doing is like, they will do this with their grandchildren or whatever, but then it's the instant, like, put your phone down. Why are you always on your phone? I'm trying to be with you. And it's like, no, this is the culture they live in. Okay. And if my son will welcome my presence in the same room while he's scrolling on his phone, he's letting me into his culture because that's just what his friend would do. They're not offended by each other.
Wow.
Sitting in the same room on the phone. I mean, you throw a party for a group of 17-year-olds and look around the room and they're all in each other's presence on the phone. And you can criticize that, but that's the culture. So we need to learn to don't underestimate, like don't tell yourself or them that nothing's happening.
Wow.
In that present, in that moment. Something's happening. And the first thing that's happening is validation. It's like, I want to be with you no matter what, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you give me, right? I want to be in your presence. And if that means you're going to be on your phone and I'm going to be reading a book, or I'm going to be on my phone, or I'm going to be whatever, I'm good with that because you matter to me. And that is building trust. So the first thing is just attaching, like just letting them know, like, I'm a safe person for you to attach to. And then I'd say the second thing is, it goes along with attunement, right? But just listening. So once there is that safety developed and they know this is because remember, they want older people in their lives. They really badly will even say they want older people in their lives, but they don't want criticism. Who does, right? Don't want that judgmental, snarky voice. So if you can be an older person in their life that has proven to them by your willingness to sit that you're not a voice of criticism and judgment, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to open up. And it might not be, again, don't underestimate the value of them just putting their phone down and saying something to you. It doesn't matter what it is, like, listen. And so you start developing this trust, and they are a vulnerable generation. Like, and I say that in like the sense of they are willing to be vulnerable where we are not. The things these people have told me, it is unbelievable the way that they have trusted me. And I believe that's because of their character as a generation and not necessarily just because I'm the special thing. I think as a generation, they are very vulnerable. They're tender. They're very sincere. And so when they are like, this is a safe person, and this is an older person who has maturity and skills and resources and wisdom that I need, they're going to start talking to you. And you're still learning the culture. I mean, if they're talking, now you're learning the language. Now you're learning the topics. Now you're learning the things that matter. And you need to give yourself a solid year to 2 years in this relationship to where you feel like, okay, I get you.
Mm.
And when, and so not that I'm not trying to scare anyone, like you need to invest 2 years in every single person, but I mean, that's how long it takes a missionary to learn, So I think it really is just, we cannot see them as issues. We cannot see them as a big problem. We've got to love them, and we've got to do the things you do with someone when you love them. And if you got a crush on someone and they'll just let you sit in the same room with them, good enough. Like, that's good enough for me, And so we've got to love them, like, passionately, to want to just be with them, and then know them. And that is the secret sauce that this generation has not been given enough of. Even with the best parents in the world, if they were given a phone at 4th or 5th grade, they were not fully succeeding in forming a group identity at age 12 and 13. And so they need this, and they want it. And yeah, that's my air and water approach. It's like,
wow,
you give someone air, you give them water, they're gonna survive. They're gonna start to live. So,
oh, what a great conversation this has been. I'm like, wow. And so amazing what you are doing, and your heart, and how you're communicating and helping me understand a little better. So
thanks for
that's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you shared some of their traits. They're vulnerable, they're tender, because I was going to say what makes them unique and special, because I don't want to go away from this episode feeling like, oh my gosh, they're so hard to reach. And I don't feel like that from you at all. In fact, I feel like you've given us tools, but something that makes them unique. And that's beautiful. And of course, they're all made in God's image and have that unique characteristic of being vulnerable and tender. And I hear like lovely hearts, And so just as we close talking about this amazing Gen Z, if you had a message for Gen Z that you would like to share with them, and that we could even share, what would that be?
The world needs you. The world needs you bad. Like, everyone on the planet right now needs healing. If you think of the generations that are living on the planet right now, we've got the children of World War II, and they were not a generation that talked much about healing. We've got Gen X. Like, we're pretty angry. We grew up pretty angry, and it shows. So Gen Z carries this beautiful willingness to see people, and to, once they know something's real, they will give it the time of day. And I think so. Yeah, Gen Z, the world needs the ministry of Gen Z, and we need. I talk a lot about leadership, but I don't mean that in the sense of like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get your act together and do something important. What I mean by that is like, find out who God has given you to be, and what part of his glory he has entrusted to you and has been cultivating in your life and your story. And yeah, let God heal you. And this is a healing generation. I believe they're going to bring healing to the body of Christ, to the kingdom of God, and as that happens, to the world. So, and they're so humble to want to receive healing first, which is rare and new, and that's a new thing. Again, older generations, we tend to be like, all right, great, I signed the bottom line, I went forward, I whatever, and now I'm off and running, and I'm going to do big things for God. And Gen Z is just, they're so humble to want to receive as much of God as he'll give them. And so that, I would say, get yourself in a posture of healing, get yourself in a community where that wants to love you and serve you, and then begin learning how that is going to be overflowing out of your life. Because I am so thankful for this generation and what they are about to bring to the world. It's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. This has been really rich. Thank you so much for this. This has been amazing.
We love you, Gen Z. If you're listening, gosh, it's even one of you. Like I can't even imagine. But man, I like you. So keep.
Yep.
Thank you, Hannah.
So thanks so much for listening. We're really glad that you joined us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. We've got some really great interviews coming too. We're excited. We've already got them recorded and ready to release those to you in the next couple of weeks.
Yep. I'm very excited about this season. Thanks for listening again. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Face to Face podcast. For more resources and information, please visit face2faceministries.org.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review. It helps others discover tools for deeper connection and lasting freedom. We will see you next time.